Japan's current population is at roughly 125 million, but it's rapidly decreasing that if Japan doesn't do anything, Japan will vanish. While birth peaked at 2 million in 1973, in 2022, only 800,000 Japanese citizens were born to the country. In the same exact year, almost double the amount of residents died. For the past 15 years, the number of deaths surpassed the number of births. As obvious as it sounds, when death exceeds birth, a country cannot sustain its population. It's going to disappear. Japan's current fertility rate is 1.33 children per woman. Although the number is above 1, this still suggests minimal growth. If the same trend continues, Japan's population should go under 100 million by 2053 and roughly 88 million by 2065. This is a 30% decrease from the current population. Identifying the cause behind declining numbers is not as simple because multiple factors are intertwined with one another. Nonetheless, the purpose of this video is to answer the seemingly simple question: why is Japan's population decreasing? I believe there are 3 reasons. The first reason is very simple: marriage. People are getting married at a later age or simply not getting married at all. Japan's peak marriage count was over 1 million pairs in 1972. Now, less than 600,000 pairs get married. The size of Japan definitely impacts these numbers, but if we were to look at these numbers as it is, the number of married couples are now half of what it used to be 50 years ago. As seen in this graph, the average age of marriages has shifted throughout the years. The average age of marriage has increased since 1990s, but it has been roughly the same since 2005. Also will argue that the main reason that causes a declining population is late marriages or Bankonka, but I think the decline of marriages is a greater cause rather than late marriages. So here are 3 reasons why people are not getting married in Japan. Number 1. People just want to be single. Other than the highest number, the top 3 reasons for men to remain single are the following: still don't see the necessity, doesn't have financial power, don't want to lose freedom. For women, the top 3 reasons are as follows: don't want to lose freedom, still don't see the necessity, want to spend time on hobbies. There's definitely more freedom by being single, so I'm assuming you might be able to resonate with these answers. But more than freedom, we want to look at the single outlier, which is the lack of opportunities. Both men and women agree that there are not many opportunities to meet a desirable partner. One reason why we see a decline in marriage opportunities is because of the decline of arranged marriages. Arranged marriages, or omiyais, has been a thing in Japan since the Kamakura period. Warring clans wanted to make sure they maintained their status and established unions that established power. Omiyais were prevalent until the 1970s. This started to change due to increased financial power. Urbanization simultaneously increased opportunities for young folks to find their partners and decreased opportunities for old folks to arrange marriages. Currently, workplace romance is where most couples meet their significant other. However, as we all might know, office romance isn't really encouraged because it could potentially affect work. Now, let's say you found a partner and you're done with your freedom. The final impediment is the financial aspect. According to SMBC Consumer Finance, the majority of Japanese citizens in their 20s start thinking about marriage after their annual salary hits 60k USD. In the same survey, the same age group also responded that they would consider raising kids once their salary hits 70k USD. Well, only 20% of all employees make 60k or above in Japan. Roughly 2% of workers make above 60k in their 20s, and 15% of all workers make above 60k. If this data is accurate, that means only 3 out of 20 people make it to 60k, and therefore the Japanese citizen cannot easily reach their ideal financial status. This naturally allows us to explore the second leading cause behind Japan's declining population: financial insecurity. Despite being the 3rd largest economy in the world, Japan's growth is very stagnant. After the economy collapsed in the late 1980s, Japan entered the lost decade, a decade of little to no growth. The Nikkei 225 has never reached its all-time high since 1989, making the Japanese market look unattractive. Japan's public debt has skyrocketed since 1989 as the government increased spending to help the suffering economy. Japan now has the largest debt in the world at 220% debt to GDP ratio. Fortunately, the unemployment rate is very low, but high employment isn't the same as high wages. Wages have been stagnant around 40k. Wages are stagnant in Japan because there is a labor shortage. Because Japan's population is decreasing, companies cannot employ the same amount of workers. One common way to assist labor shortage is to hire non-regular employees. In fact, non-regular employees are a crucial part of Japan's current economic structure. Currently, 20% of men and 50% of women are non-regular employees. Non-regular employees usually are paid less, do not receive a salary bonus, and do not receive severance pay. They also are not in a stable position as they cannot negotiate a pay raise and are hired to work for a certain period of time. More companies are hiring non-regular employees because they are easier and cheaper to hire. And all of this ultimately leads to our last reason, which is cultural and societal expectations. While this is slowly changing, most working adults have a traditional view of gender roles. Males are the primary breadwinner for the household, so men must be financially stable. Parents aren't going to allow their daughters to marry men who cannot guarantee stability. The number of unmarried non-regular employees by the age of 50 is at 60%, whereas regular employees unmarried by the age of 50 are at 19.6%. In Japan, men need desirable jobs in order to get married. Women, on the other hand, are seen as homemakers. Although these numbers are a bit old, in 2016, compared to men, women will spend 5 times more during household work. However, when focusing on the younger generation, you can tell that those in their 20s are dividing responsibilities. Nonetheless, even if the younger generation is willing, the older generation will not see gender equality as normal. Again, this is slowly changing, but as of now, the Japanese expectation of gender roles is still ingrained in society. Even if men or women have a stable occupation, there are certain societal expectations that discourage people to have a family. Japan's work culture is notorious enough that I think a lot of non-Japanese viewers are already aware of people dying from overworking. This is called karoshi. Working over hours is common and it's difficult to leave your company before your boss leaves. In fact, even taking paid leaves could be a bit difficult. Japanese people might be known to be kind, but they're equally human as others. Harassment in the office is not uncommon. The Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare released in 2020 that although sexual harassment has been on a decline, power, maternity, and paternity harassment has stayed the same for the past 3 years. When looking at the numbers for companies that had to deal with some sort of harassment, 5% of all harassment cases were related to maternity, paternity, child care leave harassment. While that may sound insignificant, basically 1 in 20 cases are specifically tied with parental leave and numbers have not changed. Such harassment is quite common that there are Japanese words for maternity and paternity harassment, matahara and patahara. This happens because, again, humans are humans. While I couldn't find data, I have heard stories of employees splitting work of mothers who take a long period of leave. Even if companies could find solutions to splitting up work, some employees mentally feel like they are working more. Again, going back to work culture. Wouldn't it suck to see employees leave early or take long periods of paid leave when you have to work over hours? I really think this is where the human element also comes in. Single men or women might have a harder time dealing with colleagues who are married and will have kids. These individuals who are married and have families, are seen as privileged. Perhaps because of societal pressure or unseen envy, there are times when Japanese workers willingly place the burden on themselves. It is true that a lot of Japanese people feel responsible and worry about causing troubles to their co-workers. For example, the average use of paid leave in Japan is at 56%. In addition to lower use of paid leave, Japanese people tend to endure difficulties without seeking help. There's also a mentality of shikatanai, which means things cannot be helped. Mental health awareness is still low in Japan, and a lot of people end up carrying the burden themselves. When different things pile up, whether that be stress from work or society, people don't have time to seek relationships. After a long day or week of work, they just want to rest. In the end, all 3 reasons for Japan's population decline are intertwined. People are delaying marriage sometimes because of financial reasons, but mainly because they simply cannot meet a desirable partner. Even if they find a partner, people feel financially helpless. In addition, cultural expectations towards men and women and societal pressure to maintain harmony adds physical and psychological burden. The easy fix is to encourage immigration, but Japan doesn't want to change their immigration law. Some Japanese commenters have argued that population decline is natural for an advanced country. They argue that people should just chill. However, there are several consequences from a decreasing population. First, let's look at economics. Back in 1960, at least 11 taxpayers supported 1 elder. It's now said that roughly 3 taxpayers support 1 elder. If the current trend continues, the government guesstimates that 1 taxpayer will be supporting 1 elder by 2060. This would place an immense amount of burden on the younger generation, and taxes will have to be reallocated to sustain the silver population. If the government passes more taxes to support the older generation, this could discourage couples to have children and solely focus on their economic well-being. Not only is the regular Japanese financially unstable, but the country as a whole is facing an economic time bomb as well. While Japan is the 3rd largest economy in the world, Its debt to GDP ratio is at roughly 220%, which is the highest in the world. If Japan is slowly vanishing, who will help Japan to pay off its debt? It's hard to believe that foreign investors are going to invest in a country that is literally dying out. If there are less Japanese people, certain cultural practices may die out due to the lack of people carrying out local traditions. In terms of security, it's definitely harder to protect your country from invasion if there's less people protecting land. Japan's situation isn't as dire as countries like Singapore and South Korea, but that doesn't mean that Japan could keep the status quo. Japan is at a tough spot. Because of the complexity of the problem, gradually increasing economic support will not be enough. A comprehensive approach to address this problem is necessary. Japan needs to increase support for families. Japan needs to promote immigration and diversity. Japan needs to strengthen gender equality and find ways to change toxic aspects of corporate and public culture. What do you think Japan needs to do to increase their population? Furthermore, do you agree or disagree with my main causes? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section. Like the video if you learned something new, and subscribe to learn more about Japanese politics.